You are all welcome to our lecture series on presentations. The last time we talked about presentations, we talked about presentations that actually are audience catching, or those that actually normally are winning presentations. We talked about the slide formatting. We talked about the animations. We talked about the font sizes. We talked about the color contrasts. I said in my other lecture that the best is white and black. They give us the best contrast between font color and background of the slide. Today we are basically going to be looking at some presentations that were offered by some people. For purposes of anonymity, I have removed, like when you look at the slide on our screen, I have removed the names and the persons. So we can now not tell the person. But now looking at this one, what you see in black is where the name of the student was, the registration number, and the program, and probably the supervisor of the student. This was a proposal that was being presented. So it was a PowerPoint presentation for a proposal. When you look at the area coverage of the slide and you look at the wordings or the statements that the student put on this slide, you can see that this is not very good. The font size of the heading, determining the effects of spent engine oil on soil and on soil chemical properties. Leave alone the name of the study or the title, but when you look at the area coverage, this wasn't a wonderful kind of preparation for the presentation. We needed a bigger font for our title, and there is also a lot of space. When you look at the bottom of the slide, we have a lot of space which is unutilized. Coming to slide number 2, we have the introduction. When you look at the introduction would have been placed, it is a title, it would have been probably centrally placed, other than placing it where he placed it or she placed it. That is left alignment, and there is space left below the bullets. Remember what we said, our bullets are not supposed to be congested. And here is somebody giving a presentation for a proposal, and is even including references. For purposes of PowerPoint presentations, we normally avoid these references. So here is including references and is putting there a whole, I think it is close to a whole paragraph. It is not supposed to be a paragraph. The bullets are supposed to be brief enough, but they are supposed to be precise. They are supposed to be up to the point. Look here. This one is talking about spent oil and what it refers to and where he read it from. Looking at also bullet number 2, he talks about the disposal of spent engine oil, and then in bullet number 3 is talking about pollution. That would have been a good one, actually a good introduction, only if he made these bullets just up to the point. What exactly do you want to tell us? What do you want to tell the reader? Or what do you want to tell the audience? We go to slide number 3. In slide number 3, the statement of the problem. Here, in the statement of the problem, he also has a reference, Wishman et al., 1994. We don't need a reference in the problem statement. It shouldn't be there. Here he talks about the spent engine oil and what it contains. and then the heavy metals there. He talks of the hydrocarbons, the toxic polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and then he mentions that these are extremely dangerous, and then he says this is a potential danger to animals that are dependent on the plants for survival. There is a disconnection between the statements, because when you talk about the hydrocarbons and the heavy metals, and you then tell us that these ones can be uptaken by the, for him he says, through food, and we really have not seen where is this food. Probably one had to, in this problem statement, to mention that how do we normally handle spent engine oils. Sometimes we have oil spills, sometimes we have this engine may come as a result of contamination from the service stations or petrol stations, and one has to tell us that when these ones are normally carried through the soil, or are carried through soil water or through surface water streams, they probably find themselves downstream in the valleys or wherever we have people growing food crops. And then he had also to tell us it is not automatic that plants are going to uptake the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. It is not automatic. And even the heavy metals he's talking about, he had to really bring it out clearly. Which kind of these heavy metals are we talking about? Because there is chemistry of the heavy metals while in water soil or soil water, and also while in the surface water, and while these metal ions are actually in the soil itself. How do these heavy metals behave while in the soil? Are they bioavailable? That one does not come out clearly in the problem statement. So this problem statement has gaps in it, and he actually jumps to the dangers to human beings who are dependent on the plants for survival. And before we go to the human beings, even the plants had to be thought about. So there is some more disconnection, but just looking at the quality of the presentation, not just the content. Even here, the bullets are congested. There is no space between the title and the bullets that follow, and there is a lot of space left at the bottom of the slide. For objectives, the presenter here had a general objective, but one thing still which is contentious is about the wordings in the general objective. Usually, the wordings in the general objective should relate to the words that we use in the title. It is overall, that's why we call it general objective. The words in it should not be exactly the same as those in the specific objectives. And when you look at the specific objectives here, you can see that in general objective is using the word determine, and later on in the specific objectives is determining. Whereas in the specific objective number 4, he mentions investigate. It is rather better to use the word investigate in the general objective, and then for specific objectives we use the word determine. Here we see that he changed, and objective seems to be centrally placed as a title, but he has a lot of space at the bottom. The slide is not well prepared. When we look at the slide that follows, materials and methods is a title. It is centrally placed. He then puts up for us objectives, and under an objective he puts materials, and then he puts method under or in line with a particular objective. When you do this, in our materials and methods section, there is a lot that you leave out, because here he just put the names of instruments, not the methods. Because when you say there is no method that is there in science or chemistry, yeah, that we call mixing. Because when he says he's going to determine the pH and then he says method mixing, that's not right. We have to communicate correctly when we are communicating in chemistry. Even spectroscopy is not a method. No, we have standard procedures that are supposed to be followed when you are going to analyze samples using spectrophotometer. And even when you say you are going to have an investigation of the differences in particle size, and you say the method is mixing and timing, that one is not clear. But looking at this slide, the content on the slide is way above normal. It is more than enough. The slide seems to be too full. So you can see that the size of the font that is being used in the body is a small size. When you project this onto a wall, it may not be very visible on the wall. When you come to results and discussion, in this particular presentation, now because we have results, it's most likely that this presentation was of a research which has already been done. So he was presenting his findings in a research study that has been done. So results and discussion is not centrally placed as a heading. He has tables, he has put there tables. Well, when you use tables, try to use the background, like in the table, the background should be contrasting well with the color font or the font of the color of the fonts you are using. So here is using blue and white. That one may not be very visible on the wall when we project this one. When you come to results and discussion, still table 3, we have a lot of space below that table, and we have white fonts on a blue background in the table, and we are saying that one is not very positive. We must worry about whether our presentation will be visible or not. For results still and discussion, here he has statements, but when you look at the statements, the particular bullets, bullet 1, 2, and 3, all these bullets are congested. There is a lot of wording which is unnecessary. We don't need this too much in our, even if it is a discussion, what are the take-home messages that you want to pick from? You don't pick everything that is there in the word document. You only pick the points. Those are the ones you put in the bullets, and then avoid the void space that you see below there, below bullet number 3. In bullet number 9, he says conclusion. Look, he has 2 bullets. He has more than half of the slide empty. And these bullets have congestion. There is a lot of wording in bullet number 2, a lot of wording. So we have to avoid, even if it is a conclusion, we must only pick points from the conclusion. Those are the ones we normally present. But here you can see the void space, you can see the wordings. He has a lot of stories which are uncalled for. In bullet number 10, the presenter has recommendations. He has 5 recommendations. Remember, he had 4 bullets. He had 4 objectives. When we are giving recommendations, they must move in line with our objectives. What message do we have from objective number 1? What is the take-home message? And what is there that is left to be done in that particular objective? That's what we would go for. What is there that we haven't done, that we need to do, that needs to be addressed, that probably further studies need to address? Here, he talks about his recommendations based on his findings or the findings of the presenter. And we can see that this slide is preferably occupied, but still the statements are too big. Avoid such statements. Those do not constitute what we call points. They are more than the points.